Welcome, everyone, to this Saturday's edition of The Truth. We're coming to you live from West Palm Beach, Florida. We're talking the assassination attempt on President Trump 1 month ago to the day. And then we're talking about the deep state. And then finally, we're going to talk about Trump v. Harris. So we've got a lot to talk about today. We welcome your phone calls at 804-778-8888. Just give us a call. Michael's in the studio, standing by, ready to take your calls. I would love to hear from you. All right, so it's been a month since the attempted assassination on President Trump. It was a sad day in America's history. It was a monumental day in America's history. And much to my amazement, it's gone dead in the mainstream media, no pun intended. I mean, it's like it never happened. They're not even talking about it. And it's just mind-boggling to me that we could have an attempt on the leading candidate for president of the United States, and the mainstream media is just pretending like it never happened. It is as disturbing as it is unsurprising. But I committed to our listeners that we are not going to let it rest. We're not going to play into the manipulation and pretend like it didn't happen. No, in fact, we are going to hyper focus on it until we get the answers of which we are deserving, and until we are able to sort out, I should say, the riddle. All right, so the shots rang out in Butler, Pennsylvania at 6:11 on Saturday, July the 13th. We now know factually and incontrovertibly that the Secret Service and local law enforcement were aware of a suspicious person in the complex a full hour and a half before Trump took the stage. They seemingly ignored it. They just pretended like, oh, happy day, everything is okay. Nothing to see here. Then we now know that the Secret Service, in their advanced planning, omitted the building on which Thomas Michael Crooks took a sniper position from their perimeter. And if you look at the perimeter that the Secret Service established, there is a map of the venue, and there is a red circumference surrounding it, except the AGR building where Crooks took up his position is conveniently excluded from the perimeter. It's just unbelievable. And it just reminds me of JFK's assassination in 1963. Secret Service assets were shipped from Butler to the First Lady's appearance 35 miles away in Pittsburgh. There was a reduced force there. And we've got some really good footage that we want to show you. If you can join us on Getter.com, hit the live button, look for John Fredericks. We're live streaming there now. We're also live streaming on YouTube.com as well as Rumble.com. And so if you want to see the video, just come join us on one of those sites. So we've zoomed out to 30,000 feet. We know that the building was not part of the perimeter. It was excluded. Cheadle said, I'll get to that in a minute, that it was because the roof was so badly sloped. Then somebody else said, oh, it was too hot. Oh my gosh, it just goes on and on. I'm not giving up on this, folks, and I don't want you to either, because this is as wrong can be. And it's time to say no more. We all have to join hands and say no more. We want to live in a country that is safe, that is honest, ethical, moral, and embraces democracy. All right, so let's break it down a little bit more. The building was out of the perimeter. Law enforcement was aware of Crooks' presence an hour and a half before Trump even took stage. Crooks took up his position on top of that AGR building and was known to law enforcement 5 minutes before the first shot was taken. Now, this is where it starts to get even dicier. There were local law enforcement officers in the building directly behind the building that Crooks scaled and took his position on. Crooks was probably some 40 or 50 feet to the left of where these officers were stationed, and they were stationed inside the building, and they were looking out relatively small windows. They could not see Crooks where he took up his position, but they may have been able to have seen him scale the window, scale the building, except they were no longer in their position. They left their duty position ostensibly to go look for the suspicious character. But what that resulted in was them leaving their duty post. Now, I don't know what you think, but I would think that if I was in law enforcement and I had been assigned a position and then I became aware of a suspicious person, that I would become glued to my post. You're assigned your post for a reason, because somebody wanted that area covered. But they were supposedly either on their own volition or they were told to leave their post to go help find this suspicious person who they could not put eyeballs on in that moment. But what it resulted in was leaving the entire building where Crooks took up his position uncovered. Now, local law enforcement had asked for the building to be covered. So let's go to the clips. We've got a couple of clips here that I think are very telling, that we should look at, that really help focus attention on this. So let's go look at this Fox News clip now.
Officer was livid in this body camera video, saying he told the Secret Service to secure this rooftop that the suspect fired from, but says the Secret Service just didn't listen.
I told them they need to post the guys over here. I told them that the Secret Service. I told them that Tuesday. I told them to post guys over here.
So here you can see the moments before the shooting where officers were actually trying to boost each other up with their hands to get up on that rooftop. We had heard about it, but there it is on video. This was 30 seconds before Trump was shot. So these were critical moments. That was when one officer, who was a local cop, said he saw the gunman up on the roof, but saw him point his weapon at him, so he dropped back down to the ground to avoid being shot.
Okay, so two things there are significant. One is you heard that was raw footage of a local police officer saying, "I told the Secret Service 5 days ago that building had to be covered," and they flicked him off. So this was not an oversight. In my view, it was an intentional decision not to cover the roof, which even the local law enforcement officer, who probably did more in directing traffic and writing speeding tickets than securing the site of a presidential visit, knew that the building needed to be protected. But the Secret Service left it unprotected. To me, that is an intentional act. And that's when my antennas go way up. You know, I think we're being manipulated. I really do. I make no bones about it. We're being told of all the mistakes that occurred. Well, I'm not buying the line that they were mistakes. I am asserting that these were intentional omissions. They left the door wide open, even while knowing. We now know that they were aware of an Iranian threat, and had actually the police, I believe it was in New York, or the Secret Service, had taken into custody an individual that had tried to hire a hitman, and he thought he was talking to the hitman, and instead he was talking to members of the FBI, and so they arrested him. Well, I mean, if you knew that, wouldn't you have been even more vigilant on July the 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania? Wouldn't you have doubled down on the coverage instead of reduced it? It's exactly what happened in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. The Secret Service protection was reduced. I mean, it's almost like it's the same playbook all over again. And then, like the school book depository, which they left available to a sniper, and the grassy knoll, by the way, the Ronald Rutrow, the now acting director of the Secret Service, just talked about the school book depository. He's still pushing the narrative that Oswald was a gunman and acted alone, by implication. But I believe that the fatal shot was fired from the grassy knoll, as do most citizen journalists and people who have written books about it, including Roger Stone, David Talbot, and Mark Twain. I'm just saying, it's the same verse, just replayed in 2024. So they were told that they needed to cover the building by local law enforcement. They declined to do so. There was a huddle on Saturday morning, July 13th, with people that were covering the venue. The Secret Service declined to attend. No, these were not mistakes. They were conscious, deliberate acts. I believe. I really do. I've studied this. I cannot tell you how many hours, well over 100 hours now, of studying the attempt on President Trump's life. I've convinced myself, and I want you to make your own decisions. I mean, don't listen to me. I'm just got a microphone and a radio program. What do I know? But I have intently studied it, and I want you to intently study it. And I don't want you to forget, and I want you to help keep it in the conversation. Because the mainstream media, the Secret Service, and the people who plan this want it to go away. They want you to forget. I'm going to do my part as one individual, not to let you forget, not to let us forget, to keep it on the forefront, because there still are a lot of questions to be asked. Now, we got another clip here. I want you to consider this interview, or not an interview, but some footage that was clipped from Butler, Pennsylvania a month ago. Let's roll clip 2.
Stationed up there, and did they see the shooter? Why weren't they engaging?
Once there was a suspicious individual reported, one of them came down, left the room that they were conducting overwatch in, went down to, I think, walk around the perimeter, see if he could find him, tried to come back in the building. The key card wasn't working, and so he called the other guy that was up in the room. The other guy left his post to come down to let him in.
The building wasn't protected, and the two people that were supposed to maybe protect it, the local law enforcement snipers, left their duty post. Gee, many Christmas. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me. And what's more mind-boggling to me is that people are willing to accept that these were just colossal mistakes. The perfect storm, if you will. Not a chance. All right, so then the citizen journalist has gone to Butler, Pennsylvania. I wish I was able to go to Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm dying to go there and look at the site myself. I intend to do so in the not too distant future. But here's an interview from The Hill with Richie McGinnis, who is a citizen journalist who actually visited Butler and shot video.
Richie joins us now to discuss it all. Richie, great to see you, and thank you so much for actually going to the site and getting this footage. It seems like, you know, it's only been a month since this happened, and a lot of people have already forgotten about it. I don't think there's any way to say this other than this was a massive security failure, and I guess the remaining question now is, was it intentional or just pure incompetence?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're actually there and you see the security perimeter that was set up and how close and how easy it was for anybody who was not secure, didn't go through a magnetometer or anything like that, to just walk up to that chain link fence that you saw in my video. They were within 100 yards of where Trump was speaking, within direct line of sight, and they could have brought, you know, people brought coolers for beers, but anybody could have brought anything in that cooler. And Crooks was actually right behind them on that barn. And that newly released body cam footage, the question that I'm asking, which is the question that the officer asked in that footage, is I asked them to secure this roof back on Tuesday, and the shooting happened on Saturday. So if the local PD were raising these questions, you know, 5 days ahead of time, why is it that nobody was looking down on that roof at that particular moment when Trump was speaking?
Right, and we've also heard reports that the Secret Service apparently skipped a briefing with the local law enforcement officials they had there prior to the rally. So there was a complete communication breakdown, it seems, between the Secret Service and then the individuals who knew the area and were familiar with the security perimeter. I don't know how that even happens.
Absolutely. And there was also a panel that was done with the local police department, and they stated that they communicated these things with Secret Service, and Secret Service skipped a briefing prior to the speech. So you have to ask yourself the question of, is this just negligence? Does animus towards Trump, because obviously Mayorkas is the one, a Joe Biden appointee is the one who's overseeing the security. Why exactly were all of these things overlooked? And I mean, is it just gross negligence, or does that animus play into it at all?
Yeah, I think that is really a key question here. And we've seen that the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, stepped down from her position after immense political pressure. But Ronald Rowe is now taken over, and he was also, tangentially in charge of this security detail.
Yeah, and it was obvious during the hearing that he was not filled in on a bunch of key details, like why was there no one in that window that directly overlooks that roof? And the question that I asked in that video, that water tower, not only does it overlook the particular building where Crooks was stationed and where he fired from, but also it has a line of sight of basically the entire area. So, I mean, if I were, 15 years old playing paintball, I would be able to secure a better perimeter than was secured around the former president of the United States. And I have zero background in anything other than Call of Duty and playing airsoft and paintball. So,
well, it all seems pretty common sense if you just take a look at the videos that you took from that location. As you were walking through with these congressmen and Benny Johnson, what was the most surprising thing that you learned as you're going through the failures that day?
Well, actually, so you can see me. I was the one standing where Trump was on stage. So as I was standing there and looking out to Benny, out on the roof where Crooks was in the exact position, I mean, with my naked eye, I could see them walking around, and then when he laid down, I could actually even still see him, and we were on the phone, can you see me now? Can you see me now? Yeah, I can see you. And so even with the naked eye from where Trump was standing, you could see somebody on that roof, whether they were in the prone position or not. And obviously, the Secret Service claimed that roof was too sloped.
Right.
I actually went up on the roof where the Secret Service snipers that everybody saw on that red barn. That roof is much more sloped than the one that Crooks was on. So I don't know where that answer came from, but anybody who was even within 100 yards of those two roofs could have determined that,
So that's a great interview, and it summarizes everything that I now believe. And I think it's really important that we get to the bottom of this. I mean, folks, I spend an unhealthy amount of time thinking about this stuff, and I spend an unbelievable amount of time trying to delve into it. And I keep asking myself why. And I know the answer. Because I want to live in a country that I grew up in. I want to live in the America that I know. I don't want to live in a country that is like the former Soviet Union and now Russia or China or North Korea. And that is exactly where we're headed. We are headed to being a fascist state where the government controls the populace and the rule is by a few and the rest of us are just sheep. And I think it's later than we think. And I do think we can turn it around. I don't think it's so far gone that we can't save it. But I'll tell you, what we have to do is we have to get out of our denial and we have to reprioritize how we spend our time and what we're going to do to help defend our country and our freedom. That's where I'm coming from. So my conclusions on July the 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania are as follows. 1, I think it was planned, and I believe it was intentional. 2, I believe it was coordinated. 3, I believe it was a blatant attempt to stop Donald J. Trump from becoming the 47th president of the United States. Those are the things that I truly, in my heart of hearts and in my brain, I have concluded. And the reasons, I won't dwell on this any further, but the perimeter was unattended. The scant protection for that roof, the AGR building, was to be provided by local law enforcement who, for whatever reason, abandoned their post. But here are the seminal things that convinced me that this was intentional. They knew for an hour and a half there was a suspicious person in the venue. They knew for a full 5 minutes that there was an individual that law enforcement was trying to locate. They allowed Trump to stay on stage No one has satisfactorily even come close to answering that question. Now, we're also being told that these bureaucrats, they talk in such strange terms. I can't remember the term that this now acting head of the Secret Service, Rowe, is using. But basically, the local police and the Secret Service couldn't talk to each other over the radio. That's his lame excuse. But they did have ample opportunity to learn that there was a suspicious person, that there were a dozen people in the local law enforcement community that were looking for crooks in the moments and the seconds and the minutes leading up to crooks pulling the trigger. Why was that word not effectively communicated to the Secret Service, or was it? Regardless, for 5 minutes, they knew that there was a suspicious person, and for a full 3 minutes, Crooks was on the roof, and one of the victims from the shooting videotaped the audience. Actually, he was videotaping Trump from behind, and you can see Crooks running along the top of the roof 3 minutes before the first shot was fired. And it's just unbelievable to me that nothing was done to intervene unless it was an intentional decision. So that's where I come down on this. And after 2 fake impeachments, 4 phony trials, and 1 failed assassination so far, they have still not stopped Donald J. Trump. I pray that they won't. But I don't have any confidence that the government will protect Trump. I've said it last week. I'll say it again. I hope President Trump has hired his own security. He needs people that are loyal to him, that he can depend on. I want to hasten to add, this is not an indictment on the people that are on the ground protecting Donald Trump on a day-to-day basis. I have met many of them. They are regular guys who I have every reason to believe are completely committed to protecting Donald Trump. But they're not the people that set this series of events in motion. Now, there's one other very significant detail that is being glossed over, but that the Heritage Foundation discovered. They bought all the cell phone data that covered Crooks's, they geofenced Crooks's residence, and they bought all the cell phone data that came into contact with Crooks at his home. Or I should say that came in contact with Crooks's home, presumably in contact with Crooks. That cell phone data has been tracked back to someone in Washington, D.C., who visits Gallery Place. We don't know why. The individual could live in Gallery Place, or he could visit Gallery Place, or he could work at Gallery Place, or he could dine at Gallery Place. It's like King of Prussia if you're in Pennsylvania, or no, more accurately, it would be like, it would be downtown Washington, just on the outskirts of downtown Washington, in a office complex that's livable, walkable, and where you can also be entertained. It's one of those types of places. Lenox Square in Atlanta, City Place in West Palm Beach. In New York, it would be Rockefeller Plaza. But here's the important thing. It's overrun with G-men. The FBI, the Secret Service, the ATF, they all have offices in that complex. So that needs to be investigated, and we need to know the answer to that. Then there's one last suspicious person in this whole thing. You remember in Dealey Plaza, there was the Umbrella Man? To this day, we don't know who Umbrella Man was. And there were so many rumors about Umbrella Man. Well, now in Butler, we have the man in the gray suit. He identified himself as an ATF agent. He did not show his credentials, to my knowledge, or YouTubers that I follow and citizen journalists who were investigating this. No one determined who he was exactly. No one looked at his credentials, but he was there, and he was asking questions. He was acting like he was the boss, and then poof, disappears, just vanishes into oblivion. Who was the man in the gray suit? We need to know. Who visited Thomas Michael Crooks' home just outside of Butler, Pennsylvania in the weeks and months leading up to July the 13th? Inquiring minds want to know. Okay, so I want to know what you think. Give me a call, 804-778-8888. You're listening to The Truth. I'm John Gordon. We come to you every Saturday on the John Fredericks Radio Network, all up and down the East Coast, east of the Mississippi, in Memphis, Nashville, Richmond, Norfolk, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and the state of West Virginia. And it is just a real honor and a privilege for me to be able to occupy this airspace. I thank John Fredericks for providing me this opportunity and this outlet to inform and to educate and to keep my head in the game. We also come to you on the CD Media platform. They are on 13 digital platforms across the globe on the World Wide Web. They're being throttled. They're being suppressed. They are investigative journalists who stand for the same thing that we do. They just want the truth. You can watch their live stream right now on Rumble and Getter, where they simulcast the truth. And all of our past episodes are on rumble.com. You can go there and watch the last 2 years worth of episodes. Rumble.com, The Truth with John Gordon, John Gordon Truth. We're also on X, where you can follow us at John Gordon Truth. But right now, I'd love to hear from you. I've laid the case out for you as objectively as I know to do. And I'm not trying to lead us to a preconceived notion or theory. I'm really not. But what do our listeners think? Who do you think is behind this? Well, it smacks to me straight out of the deep state. If you look at the presidents of the United States who have been removed from office, they all track right back to the deep state. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. Today, anyone who will look and who has a conscience has to conclude that the CIA killed Kennedy. Johnson and Hoover covered it up. Robert Kennedy. I don't have proof. We've got a lot of smoke that would lead one to believe that it was not Sirhan acting alone, or maybe not even Sirhan. And then Ronald Reagan. There are those who believe that Ronald Reagan was a target of the deep state. That one is a little more tenuous to me, but there are glaring similarities between what happened to Ronald Reagan and what happened to Donald Trump. Namely, he was not very well protected by the Secret Service on that day. John Hinckley was allowed to get within 4 or 5 feet of President Reagan in Washington. And then Donald J. Trump. They all have one thing in common. They did not have confidence in the intelligence community. Richard Nixon had a meeting with Richard Helms in the Oval Office. It became tense. It became, it devolved into an argument. And Nixon told Helms, "I think I know who killed Jack." Richard Helms' response was telling. He sat there stone-faced, did not say a word. 6 months later, Nixon resigned from office in disgrace. After he left the White House, he was interviewed and asked point blank about this.
Was or could have been a CIA conspiracy to remove you from office?
I don't know. I know many people think so. I would say that I've found it difficult to understand why the CIA, which apparently had advanced knowledge of the break-in, didn't inform me. I found it difficult to understand how it could have been that at least 2 of those involved had CIA connections, and nevertheless that it was not brought to my attention as far as the break-in occurring. I must say, too, the CIA had motive. It was no secret that I was dissatisfied with the CIA, with its reports, and particularly with their appraisals of Soviet strength and our other problems around the world.
You think they feared you?
No question about it, and they had reason to. I was going to shape up that organization and the Defense Department, the whole government for that matter, but particularly that one. At one occasion I said I thought we could cut a third of the people out of the CIA and do a better job. I didn't want to weaken it, as unfortunately it was castrated in the post-Watergate era. I wanted to strengthen it. I wanted to get rid of some of the dead wood and so forth, and they knew it, so they had a motive. I'm not prepared to say whether there was a conspiracy or not. I would only say that it should make a fascinating study for an investigative reporter. He won't win any prizes by writing anything that would not be anti-Nixon. But on the other hand, it would perhaps be historically interesting.
If there was such a conspiracy, do you think that reporter would ever live to write about it? Is it the kind of thing that will ever come out?
I have a feeling that all of this talk that the CIA is going to knock off those that will, shall we say, reveal some of their covert operations, those in this country, I think that's exaggerated. I think that may have been the case in times past, not now.
What did Nixon mean by that? That may have been the case in times past. The CIA was created by Harry Truman, or during his administration. And so what would Nixon have been thinking about when he said that may have been the case in times past? Harry Truman wasn't removed from office. Dwight Eisenhower was not removed from office. Jack Kennedy, who said he was going to split the CIA into 1,000 parts and spread them from the Pacific to the Atlantic, he was removed. All right. He was removed from life. Tom is on the line. Thank you for calling, Tom, and welcome to The Truth.
Thank you, John, and thanks for spreading the truth.
My pleasure.
All right, so you're talking about the connection between the Kennedy assassination and the attempt on Trump and the private security that would be advisable. Now, if you recall Jim Garrison's book on the Trail of Assassins about the Kennedy and an investigation that reopened and became the Church Commission, the private security issue, I think Trump needs to be very careful with that. I agree with you that he needs that, but there was this guy that showed up and said, I'm here to protect you, Mr. Garrison, in your investigation, and he turned out to be a CIA or FBI asset who was tracking him around to get dirt on him. I mean, that's a fascinating part of that book. The whole book's fascinating.
Confirmation for me that there's something up and that there's a cover-up is all the disinformation that is coming out. Christopher Wray testified before Congress and said, well, maybe it was just shrapnel or glass from the teleprompter. We don't know that it was a bullet that hit Trump. I mean, I think everybody in the listening audience and in that committee room just almost passed out when he had the nerve to make that statement. Kimberly Cheadle says, we didn't put people up there because the roof was sloped. More BS. Ronald Rowe said, we can't have a rush to judgment. This could have been our school book depository moment. Yeah, it could have been. And I think they were disappointed that it wasn't, because I believe that they were part of it. I don't know who was part of it, but clearly somebody orchestrated this. I'm going to move on now. Tom, thanks for calling. I appreciate it. But the point that I'm trying to get to is this. I've had enough. I seriously have had enough of the deep state. I do not want to live in a country that is going to be operated like this. If you agree that the deep state killed Kennedy, if you agree that they removed Richard Nixon, who I think was a phenomenal president, but he got crosswise with the CIA, and so 6 months later, they removed him. And now you have Donald Trump. And the one thing all these people had in common, JFK, Richard Nixon, Donald Trump, they were getting us out of war. Kennedy was trying to get his advisors out of Vietnam. Kennedy made it very clear that he was going to get us out of Vietnam. Well, they kill Kennedy, and now Vietnam blows into a huge war that lasts for well over a decade. Richard Nixon comes in. He actually gets us out of Vietnam. And Donald Trump comes into office, and he gets us out of a 20-year war in Afghanistan and a 12-year war, as I recall, in Iraq. I mean, are you connecting the dots here? And so who is the deep state? It's not one person. It's not the CIA. It's not the FBI, but it is. And it's the military-industrial complex. And it's the grifters who spend decades in Washington. They don't want the game to change. And it just may be bigger than any of us, but it's not bigger than all of us. And that is the point. I mean, it's acknowledged by people on both sides of the aisle. Look, maybe you've heard this clip with Chuck Schumer.
They have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you.
The first part of the clip was cut off. He said the intelligence community have 6 ways to Sunday to get back at you. But it's all the people in Washington who are feeding at the trough. And I'm telling you, what I want, if any of those people are listening, I want them to listen to this. These are not my words. These are the words from James Angleton, who was the head of counterintelligence for the CIA. As he was approaching the end of his life, he was making some confessions or near confessions. As he was dying, he said, in speaking about the men in the intelligence apparatus, and I think he was really speaking more globally, although we hadn't really identified the term at that point of the deep state. But here's what he said, quote, from James Angleton. If you were in a room with them, you were in a room full of people that you had to believe deservedly end up in hell. I guess I will see them soon. So if you are a member of the deep state and you are within the sound of my voice today, you are complicit. You are complicit for all the lying. You are complicit for all the dastardly deeds, not the ones that are done in good faith to protect the sovereignty of the United States, not the ones that you use to justify your bad behavior, where you are actually doing your jobs and protecting the people of this country from the evilness in the world around us. But my suspicion is, if I could get inside of your head, that you think that your bravery in those contexts give you the authority to determine the trajectory of our country and determine the outcome of our democracy. Well, I've got news for you. You are wrong. Your job is to stamp out evil around the world, but not to control the destiny of our country through our political process. And I think James Angleton realized that very clearly as he was about to go make his maker. And he said that you had to believe that they were deservedly going to go to hell, and I guess I will see them there soon. Does that resonate with you? Are you one of those people? You better go sit quietly and think about how you want to spend eternity. But right now, stop it. Stop what you're doing, because you're ruining this country. You're ruining the Constitution of the United States. You're ruining the rule of law. You're destroying what people have given their lives for, to create our freedoms, to defend a free country. And you're ruining it. And why? Why are you ruining it? Very simply, I know why you're ruining it, and so do you. Because of your own greed and lust for power. And it's going to send you straight to the bowels of hell. That's the message I want you to think about. I can't stop you. I can get on the radio and I can rant and rave and I can bring facts to the listening audience that we appeal to. We can stop you, but we need an army of people that are willing to stand up against this evil and to say no more. This is not the country I want to live in. I don't want to live in a country that looks like Russia or China, where our political adversaries are killed. You think that guy in Russia who was Putin's political opponent died of natural causes? They sent him to jail where they killed him, just like they tried to do to Trump. They really wanted to get Trump in Rikers Island so they could Epstein him. They failed at every turn, and I hope they'll continue to fail, but I want them to stop what they're doing. It's more than common that you've got to worry about if you're in that class. If you're in this ruling class who thinks you know better than the rest of us how this country should be run, you're complicit. Your silence makes you complicit. You know what the story is. You know what the deal is. And you're turning your head and looking the other way, wink, wink. And you think that gets you off scot-free? I don't think so. because I believe in God the Almighty, and He is watching, and He is all-knowing, and you're going to literally have hell to play. But I want to ask each one of you today, ladies and gentlemen, what are you doing about it? I get all these texts and all these emails, and I get people calling me and say, oh, John, give them hell on Saturday. I want to know, what are you doing about it? Have you written the letter to the editor yet? Have you written your congressman? Have you gone door to door? Have you written a check to Trump or the Republican Party? I don't see them engaging in the activity that I'm accusing these other people of doing. I just don't see it. If you know it and I've missed it, write johngordontruth@gmail.com and I'll read it and I'll look into it. But I see no evidence. I see no glimmer, not even a shred of evidence that they are engaging in the kind of evilness that I'm seeing the Democrats and the deep state engage in. And it's got to stop. It's just got to stop. Keith's on the phone. Thank you, Keith, for calling. Welcome to The Truth.
Well, we learned that the FBI was authorized to use lethal force.
Oh, at Mar-a-Lago in the raid?
Yes.
Yeah, no question. But they had to know Trump wasn't at home. I think it's suspicious as hell. It does make you wonder. I think they're tracking every move he makes. I don't think there are any secrets about where he is. And I will tell you that Mar-a-Lago is locked down. I want to get to that in just a second as we are nearing the end of our broadcast today. Keith, you said you also had a comment to make. If you could make it quickly.
I refer to it, and yes, I acknowledge the question as to, President Trump's schedule on that day that was changed and he was not at Mar-a-Lago. And yes, anybody probably would assume that they knew where he was. But to trust the FBI to be doing the investigation on the second assassination attempt, as I call it, at Butler, Pennsylvania.
The undeniable assassination attempt. There's not a person in the world that believes that was an assassination attempt except for a few left crazies who say that it was all staged. That's just, I'm not even going to spend any time talking about it.
What it was that it was an armed robbery, home invasion, FBI SWAT raid, because what they went in there for was probably to steal documents from Trump, probably that were incriminating to the bad guys, probably to, as they did, stage phony evidence and then take pictures of it that was put up all over media.
Well, everything you say is true, and I have actually had that thought myself, that why would they go to such dramatic lengths to go and do the unprecedented, which really only bolstered Trump in the polls because people were very sympathetic to the fact that the FBI came into Mar-a-Lago and raided it, and in a very, very uncharitable way, going into Melania Trump's bedroom and rifling. Keith, I'm out of time. I got Hona calling.
The Secret Service, as Dan Bongino pointed out, stood down, and he said that they messed up on that occasion because there's no way that they should have allowed that, and also allowed them to force them to turn off the security cameras. That was a major violation in...
Yeah, I don't know. I've wondered about that as well. Trump v. Harris. We're going to have a choice to make in just a couple of months, and we all have to do our part. Every single person has to vote. Every single person has to take 10 people to the polls with us. And we've got to get Trump in office so that he has a chance to clean up this mess. I truly believe this might be our last hope. You watch what's happening. Kamala Harris has answered 0 questions in 2 weeks to the media. Not one. Donald Trump is having had a press conference at Mar-a-Lago just 2 days ago. And he's out there. He interviewed with this YouTuber, Aiden Ross, who's a 20-year-old who has 2 million people that watch him. And Trump is accessible. He allowed himself to go be interviewed by a 20-year-old who knew what this kid might have asked, and millions of people have watched the video. And guess what? On Monday, just 2 days from now, Trump is going to go on X. It'll be the first time he's been back on X since he was banned from Twitter. And he and Elon Musk are going to have a conversation. Folks, I believe that this truly could change the trajectory of the 2024 elections. And I say that for a couple of reasons, really. One is Trump has got 90 million followers on X, Twitter. He had 90 million on Twitter. They're still listed as followers on X. I don't know who knows what the number is today. A lot of people will probably have moved on, died, or don't go on X anymore, but tens of millions of followers on X. Elon Musk has 190 million followers on X. You put those numbers together, they're going to have 250 million potential listeners. My biggest concern is that they're going to break the internet. I don't know that the internet can handle that much. Well, I'm going to leave you this. You know, John Voight is Angelina Jolie's father. They have an estranged relationship, but this is what John Voight posted just a couple of days ago on X, and I think he hit the nail on the head. I'm John Gordon. I've told you the truth today. I'm going to leave you here with John Voight.
My friends, this is the war of our lifetime now. We the people are in trouble if this nation picks Kamala Harris. We must stop this crime that is happening. It's a war crime that Obama is directing, and Kamala Harris will be the cackling hyena that just listens and repeats. If we do not stop this horror, you, my friends, will have the biggest horror that you will not know how to end. We must all see this truth, become one with this understanding that God will guide us with words of wisdom, that we may understand that Donald Trump will make any sacrifice to save America. We the people are in danger, and we must vote for President Trump because he will save this nation. And the left are all afraid of his strength because he is only for the people. He's not for the power, for the greed, the lies, or wanting to destroy one's hard-earned earnings. We must stop this madness now. Our children are in danger. The left is trying to take away your children and turn them into non-binaries. You all on the left, the ones who are my peers that preach, you all know who you are. What have you all learned in this life? Have you learned the lessons that will bring you to the higher place of eternity? This is now all your lessons. For each one who votes against Trump, this will be among the worst crimes that you will see in your lives. And you know why? This nation has criminals killing your child, father, brother, friend, you, because of the left mentality allowing this border to be open. The ones who are on the left who fight against Trump will pay a price for the injustice of lies that are Kamala Harris and Obama. And all of you who think this is the greatest economy, you will find that your life will sink into a hole of darkness, and the freedom we all once had will be burned in the dark plague of the darkest time in history, like the destruction of the Civil War. My fellow Americans, we've come too far, and this life we were given was the blessing of God, and this is our hope, to remember that he shall chant the words of Psalm 25 and in the Torah, Isaiah 55. We shall overcome. May God watch over us and bring this nation back together so her beauty will shine with her glory, the red, white, and blue. God bless America, and he will protect our nation against this evil left, and Donald Trump will make America great again. Much love to you.